Hello everyone, my name is Anna Davies and I am a therapist and anxiety and stress management expert working in conjunction with Action for Family Carers for their fabulous project Feeling Good, Caring Well. It's a real pleasure for me to be doing these online videos for you and I really hope you find them useful. Today I'm going to be talking you through a cognitive behavioural technique called EFT. Now, EFT is a really well-researched technique that's used by many therapists in many different ways. If you're not familiar with the term cognitive behavioural techniques, CBT, cognitive behavioural techniques, are an element of therapeutic tools that we use. Now, CBT techniques are usually used for alleviating the intensity of an emotion or a feeling. So we tend to use them for things such as phobias, fears, anxiety management, anger management, or even things such as giving up smoking or trying to diet when you feel really overwhelmed by a compulsion, a sense or a need or an overwhelming emotion and you need to reduce the intensity of that. Now, EFT is a fabulous tool for anxiety management or if you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed. EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Technique and it kind of does what it says on the tin. It's a tool to free you from the intensity of an emotion. It was developed by a man called Gary Craig in America and it was originally developed for Vietnam War veterans, so people who had obviously, as you can imagine, experienced and seen some very distressing things, had experienced quite a lot of trauma and they found themselves on a day-to-day basis and during conversation feeling incredibly overwhelmed by a memory, a thought or a feeling. And so Gary Craig developed this technique to use with them. There's some really interesting videos you can watch if you have access to YouTube. You can Google Gary Craig EFT Vietnam War veterans. They're not very happy, upbeat videos, I have to warn you, but they're a really good example in practice of EFT being used with people to great success. So EFT was originally started as a technique for use with those people and it travelled its way across the pond to us, and now it's a really popular technique used by lots of therapists and holistic practitioners to support people with reducing their sense of being overwhelmed, anxious, stressed, etc. Now, EFT works for a number of reasons. The first one is that it's rhythmical. Now, rhythmical things, rhythmical activities, rhythmical things that engage the part of our brain that responds to rhythm helps us self-soothe. Self-soothe. That's a mouthful. It helps us decompress, okay? And it also engages the logical side of our brain. When we're stressed, anxious or overwhelmed, you will know for yourself how easy it is to think of the worst case scenario, to do something that we call catastrophic thinking, because the creative, energetic part of our brain is engaged, which means we're able to think of the worst things and decide that they're going to happen. When we're overwhelmed, it's very unlikely that the part of our brain that deals with logic and numbers is engaged because it just doesn't get lit up when we're in that kind of hypervigilant, overwhelmed, stressed mode. So it's a really good thing to engage that part of our brain, but when we engage ourselves with rhythm, it helps us release dopamine. And if you've watched video number 1 about belly breathing, you'll know the importance of dopamine and how incredibly vital it is to have lots of stores of that in the body in times when you are feeling stressed and overwhelmed. So reason number 1, that EFT can be really successful for people. The second reason is it's based on acupressure and acupuncture points in the body. Now, acupressure and acupuncture are some of the only alternative therapies that can be funded by the NHS because there's so much research in them. These are techniques that have been around for thousands of years. So that's another element of it. The third is that it's a good old-fashioned distraction technique, and these are not to be underestimated. When you are overwhelmed or stressed or anxious, you will perhaps know for yourself that it's very difficult to see past the thing, person, idea or fear that is keeping you in that place. It's a bit like putting on a pair of glasses and wearing a film, so therefore you only see through that lens. So for example, if you are feeling that you're completely overwhelmed, the chances are that everything you look at, every task you encounter, every slightly difficult conversation you have, you're going to see through that lens of overwhelmedness. Therefore, it's going to contribute. It's going to be really difficult to come out of that emotion. It becomes all encompassing. So distraction techniques are actually really important. And a distraction technique is actually trying to light up a different part of the brain. It's trying to jog the brain out of the groove that it's become stuck in, a bit like a record. So it's not to be underestimated. It's a really important thing to do. So they're the reasons that EFT can be really successful. The fourth element, the fourth reason, is that EFT is a cognitive behavioural technique. And generally, cognitive behavioural techniques exist to try and help reprogram our brain, if you like. When we've had a negative thought enough times, it becomes quite set in our brain. Our brain is a really clever bit of kit, but it also really loves repetition. It likes to do what it knows best. Therefore, if we do something enough times, it becomes our go-to thing. And so actually, in order to change that, we do kind of need to try and reprogram the brain. And CBT is about giving the brain an alternative thought. Now, you don't even need to be invested in that thought very much. So, for example, I had a very big fear of flying, and I used EFT to help me with my fear of flying. Now, when I would get on a plane, I would have some pretty negative thoughts that I have had over and over and over again. They might be, I'm going to die, I feel trapped, I'm scared, I can't handle this, I'm going to lose myself, I'm going to really have a meltdown. And those would be a running commentary in my brain. Now, part of my EFT was just telling myself that I could manage. Sounds simple. And sounds like something that you might not be too invested in, but that's okay. I didn't need to be invested in that thought too much. I just needed to think it over and over again to open up my brain. Sorry, there's me knocking something off while I'm talking. To open up my brain to a different possibility, yeah? So to give my brain an alternative thought. So you don't need to be invested in the alternative thought. You just need to do it enough times that your brain goes, oh, this is another thing that I know how to do. And then that's a different pair of glasses you're putting on. You're putting on a pair of glasses that opens up possibilities. I maybe can cope, okay? So EFT is kind of goes across the board. It helps decompress the body physically, so reduce the kind of chemical imbalance that happens when we're overwhelmed. And it's also a really nice way to try and give your brain some alternative thoughts, some alternative messages. Now, EFT involves tapping on certain parts of the body and accompanying that tap with a phrase. That's the CBT element of it. Now, when we tap, we want to tap pretty firmly, and you want to use 2 fingers. Now, again, like the belly breathing, EFT takes about a minute, so you can do this as many times as you like, as often as you like. The process of EFT is when you feel yourself reaching a peak, and that will look different for everyone. It'll be different for me in comparison to what it's like for you. But when you feel yourself reaching a peak of being overwhelmed, now that could be anxiety, it could be stress, it could be worry, fear, anger, whatever is personal to you. But when you feel yourself rising, that's the time to do something. Don't wait until you're at a scale of 10. You're right at the top end. Notice your peak, notice the rise. Maybe it might be a rise in your breathing, or a sense of a fluttering anxiety feeling in your chest. Or it might be that you're just becoming a little bit overwhelmed and you're not thinking clearly. That's your peak. Notice that it's coming. You would then decide to do a quick bit of EFT, and it is quick. And what you would do is decide for yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 how manageable this feeling is. So 10 being completely unmanageable and 1 being absolutely manageable. Then you would engage in a round of EFT. Now, it's called a round because the places that you tap kind of go in a circle, okay? When you finish that round of EFT, you take a nice breath for yourself and notice, where am I on that scale? Did I start at a 10 and now I'm an 8? Is that enough for me? Do I need it to be a 5 in order for me to continue? If you need it to be a 5, you're going to do another round. You can do it as many times as you like. Now, let me show you the technique of EFT and then we'll piece it all together. So as I said, you're going to tap on certain parts of your body. Now, these are acupressure points on your body. Some you may feel, some you may not. You may feel none at all. You may feel one and not the others. It's completely individual for everybody. Don't put too much weight or gravitas on that. It isn't really about that. But you'll know if you felt it is a bit like tapping a bruise, okay? Now, EFT involves tapping on 9 points in your body. It has to be in the order that I'm going to show you, and it must be accompanied by the phraseology that I'm going to show you as well. So I'll show you the tapping points and then we'll have a go. So 2 fingers, nice firm taps. You should be able to hear the sound of your tapping. So we're not going for light strokes. We're not hitting, we're gently tapping. Now the first tapping point is on what we call the karate chop. So it's this soft, fleshy part, the side of our hand. It's not the palm, it's not the top of the hand, it's the side of your finger here on your palm. So that's our first tapping point. The second is on the top of your head. Now if you're not quite sure where you're tapping, rest your palm in between your forehead and your nose, and where your fingers come to naturally, that's where you're tapping. If you're wearing glasses, you might need to take them off, okay? So the third tapping point is on the inside of the eyebrow on the bone. So third tapping point right here. The fourth is on the outside of the eyebrow on the bone, right here. The fifth is under the eye on that kind of sinusy bone, the cheekbone. Sixth, between the lip and the nose. 7 is chin. 8, she realised she hasn't thought the video level through, so I'm going to get up on my tiptoes. 8 is on your breastplate here. You can use 2 fingers, 1 hand, whatever feels more comfortable for you. And then the 9th tapping point is underneath your armpit. So about a palm's distance underneath your armpit. For women, you'll be able to find that easily. That's where your bra strap sits. For men, take a palm underneath the armpit and that's your tapping point. So they're your 9 tapping points and they must be done in that order. Now, if you're watching this and thinking, I'll never remember them, I can tell you in 11 years of teaching EFT, nearly everyone I've shown it to has remembered it after 2 or 3 times of doing it. And hopefully we'll be able to accompany this video with a picture, with a diagram of the EFT tapping points so you can see them for yourself. Now, as you tap, you're going to accompany your tap, each point, with a phrase. And the phrase remains the same regardless of what you're tapping on. So, if you're anxious, it would be, even though I'm anxious, I'm okay. Even though I'm anxious, I'm okay. If you're fearful, even though I'm fearful, I'm okay. Even though I'm fearful, I'm okay. And so on and so on and so on. For me, when I was flying, it was, even though I'm scared, I'm okay. Even though I'm scared, I'm okay. You tap on whatever is the most important to you, and you'll know in the moment what that feeling is. Now, you must accompany each tap with that mantra. That's the CBT element, that's the alternative thought. So we've got our rhythm. By the nature of doing the technique, we're distracting. We've got the CBT element, okay? And we're also using the pressure points. The other really important part is you need to tap at least 9 times on each point. But I'm going to caveat that and say, don't get too concerned about that. You will find that when you've said the phrase, you've already tapped. So if you watch me now, count my taps. Even though I'm anxious, I'm okay. So I've already done the 9 taps. So don't worry about it too much, okay? So a round of EFT would look like this. Let's use my flying example to help guide us. When I'm on my way to the airport, I'm going to do a round of EFT. When I get to the airport, I'm going to do a round of EFT. When I'm walking towards the plane, I'm going to do a round of EFT. What I'm doing is taking a moment. How manageable is this for me? Completely unmanageable, 10. Very manageable, 1. I'm going to do a round of EFT, and then I'm going to come back and see what my number is, okay? So we're going to have a practice now. Now this is a full setup, so when we practice this, don't be overly concerned that you don't feel unicorns and rainbows. This is something that you need to practice in the moment when it's really, really needed for you. But let's take an example. Let's tune in, everybody, to feeling overwhelmed. I'm sure that's something that we can all attune to. So have a think about, very briefly, in a way that feels safe for you, something that makes you feel overwhelmed. And decide how manageable that is for you on a scale of 1 to 10. And now we're going to have a go together. So, following me round with the taps and speaking the phrase out loud. Even though I'm overwhelmed, I'm okay. 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 Notice if anything is happening for you. Even though I'm overwhelmed, I'm okay. Armpit. Even though I'm overwhelmed, I'm okay. And then as you finish, a big deep breath in and out. The rhythmical part that engages our brain helps us release dopamine. And you'll notice for yourself if you've released dopamine, as you take that breath out, it'll be an elongated decompression type breath. So notice that. You would then just pause, think again, where am I on the scale of manageability from a 1 to a 10? Have you brought it down enough in order for you to continue, or do you need to do another round of EFT? Now, this is best practice in the moment for you, and remember that our brain likes repetition, so the more you do this, the better your brain will respond to it, the better your brain will respond to it. Good luck. I hope it's a technique that works for you, and stay well, keep safe, and hopefully you get to watch the rest of our videos as well. Take care.